Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we are really going behind the scenes during the Cold War. Yeah, into the world of espionage. Um, we're looking at some newly declassified files from the 1960s and 70s from MI5.
MI5?
Yeah, Britain's security service. And these files are fascinating.
Absolutely.
They not only give us a look at, what MI5 was concerned about back then, but we also get a deeper look into some of the famous spy cases that I'm sure many of our listeners will know at least a little about.
Yeah.
But these files, it's almost like they shine a light on how espionage was
Yeah.
so closely linked to social dynamics at the time and even
Yeah.
personal struggles.
Yeah, you'll notice as we go through these files
Mm.
that they offer a glimpse into the anxieties
Mm.
and the prejudices of British society at the time. And it's a good reminder
Yeah.
that intelligence work is never conducted in a vacuum. It's always influenced by the social and political context.
Right. Okay, so let's just dive into our first case then. We're going to go back to 1962. Cold War tensions are high. And we have this seemingly ordinary civil servant named John Vassall, who is convicted of spying for the Soviet Union. Seems like a pretty straightforward case of espionage, but I have a feeling it's more complicated than that.
Well, at first glance, it might seem that way. But there is much more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah.
This was a time when homosexuality was illegal and deeply stigmatized in Britain.
Right. Okay.
And Vassall was a homosexual man.
Okay, so how does that tie into his espionage activities then?
Well, while Vassall was working at the British Embassy in Moscow, the KGB, the Soviet intelligence agency,
Yeah.
they set a honey trap for him. They basically lured him into compromising situations and took photographs of him that they could then use for blackmail.
Oh, wow.
This was unfortunately quite a common tactic during the Cold War.
Yeah.
The KGB often exploited personal vulnerabilities, especially those that could lead to social ruin if exposed, to coerce individuals into becoming informants or agents.
So they use these photos to pressure him into handing over secrets.
Yes.
Wow, that's really taking advantage of someone at their most vulnerable.
It is.
I mean, did this tactic also contribute to this widespread fear that homosexuals were security risks at the time?
Absolutely. Vassall's case really amplified those fears, feeding into the existing prejudice and paranoia surrounding homosexuality. And, it really had a chilling effect, shaping MI5's approach to security clearances and investigations for years to come.
It's fascinating how these files are really giving us insights, not just about this spy, but also about the society that he lived in and the anxieties of that era. One thing that really stuck out to me was the description of Vassall's social life in the files. They actually described him as being very active in Moscow's social scene, even more so than some diplomats.
It is rather intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some even describe him as a social climber, suggesting that he was eager to elevate his social status. It makes you wonder if this drive for social acceptance played a role in his vulnerability to the KGB's manipulation.
Right, maybe he was seeking acceptance, a sense of belonging in these circles.
Ultimately.
And that just made him an easier target
Potentially.
for their tactics. The files also go into detail about MI5's surveillance operation against Vassall. And it sounds like something straight out of a spy film.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, they had his London apartment under constant watch. They were intercepting his mail. They even bugged his phone calls.
Yeah, it's a really vivid illustration of the lengths that intelligence agencies went to during the Cold War. And, we have to remember that Vassall was living this double life, maintaining this public facade while secretly working for the Soviets. That pressure must have been immense.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I found particularly surprising, though, was that even after his conviction and imprisonment, Vassall reportedly expressed some admiration for one of his KGB handlers. That's not what you typically expect from someone who had been manipulated and betrayed.
No, it's not. But it really underscores the psychological complexity of these relationships. The KGB was known for cultivating personal connections with their assets, often making them feel valued and understood. It was a way to foster loyalty, even when the relationship was based on deceit and coercion.
So, in a way, Vassall's admiration highlights how effective these tactics could be.
Exactly.
So we've got this social climber caught in a honey trap, entangled in this web of Cold War paranoia. What's next in our exploration of these MI5 files?
Well, next we'll delve into the case of Fred Warner, a close friend of Guy Burgess, who was a member of the infamous Cambridge 5 spy ring.
The Cambridge 5.
Yes.
Wow. Their story is like something out of a spy novel.
It is.
What kind of insight?
Warner's file is full of these little personal anecdotes and observations alongside the official investigations, which makes it such a unique perspective on Burgess. You really get a glimpse of Burgess as a person, beyond the larger-than-life figure he became in espionage history.
So what did Warner have to say about his infamous friend then? I mean, what was their relationship really like?
Well, according to Warner, Burgess wasn't exactly a model employee. They worked together at the Foreign Office. And Warner claimed that Burgess was, and I quote, incapable of managing the day-to-day business.
Wow.
He even called Burgess a nuisance during a diplomatic trip they took to Paris.
So it sounds like Burgess might have been relying more on his charm than his work ethic.
Yeah, you could say that.
Did their paths mainly cross at the Foreign Office? Or did Warner's files give any indication that their friendship extended beyond work?
Well, they were definitely close friends outside of work as well. There's even this incident mentioned in the files, although it's shrouded in some mystery, where Warner is rumored to have pushed Burgess down a flight of stairs.
He pushed a future Soviet spy down the stairs?
He did.
Was there bad blood between them?
Well,
Or did Warner suspect anything about Burgess's double life?
the files don't provide a clear motive, unfortunately. Warner himself claimed to have no memory of the incident, which, given their social habits, isn't entirely surprising. But the fall itself had a significant impact on Burgess, leading to a long hospital stay and some ongoing health issues.
Wow, so that's quite a dramatic turn of events. It makes you wonder, what really happened that night? Did this incident affect their friendship at all?
It's difficult to say for certain, but it definitely adds another layer of intrigue to their already complicated relationship. But as in Vassall's case, a recurring theme in Warner's file is MI5's intense focus on his sexual orientation. They seem particularly interested in the fact that Warner had been accused of homosexual activities, which, remember, were illegal at the time.
So even though he was a close friend of a known Soviet spy, MI5 was still preoccupied with his personal life.
It seems that way, and it really highlights how deeply ingrained these societal prejudices were. They couldn't seem to disentangle their investigations from the prevailing moral judgments of the time.
It must have been frustrating for Warner to have his personal life constantly scrutinized, even while he was under suspicion, for being connected to aspiring. What was MI5's final verdict on Warner then?
Well, despite their suspicions and all their efforts to downplay Warner's friendship with Burgess, MI5 ultimately concluded that he wasn't a security risk. They simply couldn't find any solid evidence linking him to espionage activities.
So 2 cases down, both involving personal lives colliding with Cold War espionage. Where to next on this deep dive?
Well, for our last case, let's go back to 1941. Our subject this time is Irwin Sanders, a Dutchman with a story. So unbelievable, you might think it came straight out of a spy thriller.
Oh, I love a good spy thriller. Tell me more. Tell me more about this outlandish story.
So Sanders arrived in the UK, claiming to have escaped from the Gestapo.
Yeah.
In this daring mission, he even presented a bayonet as proof, claiming to have used it to, wait for this, bayonet 30 Germans.
30 Germans?
30 Germans.
That's almost an entire platoon. Did MI5 believe him?
Well, they tested the bayonet, and it turned out to be completely clean. No trace of blood. It quickly became clear that Sanders was, shall we say, embellishing his tale.
So was he delusional? Or a desperate man just trying to gain asylum? Or was there a more calculated motive behind his fabrication?
Well, that's what MI5 was trying to figure out.
Oh.
They had a difficult time determining what, if anything, about Sanders' story was true. He kept changing his narrative, offering multiple versions of his escape from the Gestapo. He also spread Nazi propaganda, while he was interned as an enemy alien, and even attempted to escape from internment multiple times.
This guy sounds like a real handful. So what did MI5 ultimately conclude about him then? Was he a spy? A fantasist? Or something else entirely?
Well, they ultimately concluded that Sanders was too unreliable to even be a German agent. They labeled him a pathological liar. He was eventually deported back to the Netherlands in 1945.
Okay.
But not before. He consumed a considerable amount of MI5's time and resources.
So not a spy, but a master at disrupting the system and keeping the intelligence agencies busy. He sounds like a fascinating character study in his own right. So what can we take away from all these cases we've looked at today?
Well, I think these files really highlight how intertwined personal lives can become with matters of national security. During the Cold War, they also underscore the dangers of letting societal biases and anxieties influence intelligence work.
It's incredible how much these files reveal about the era. You know, beyond just the spy stories, you really get a sense of the anxieties and the prejudices that shaped people's lives and had a very real impact on the course of events.
Yeah, that's what makes these archives so valuable. They're not just about spies and secrets. They're a window into the past, offering a unique perspective on the social and political landscape of the time.
Right. It's a good reminder that history is never black and white. There are always these layers of complexity and nuance to uncover. What do you think, for our listener, is the most important thing to keep in mind when exploring these kinds of historical records?
I think it's crucial to remember that these files represent just one perspective, one interpretation of events. It's important to approach them with a critical eye, to question the assumptions and biases that may have shaped the information they contain.
It's like putting together a puzzle, trying to piece together the bigger picture from these fragments of information, always aware that there might be missing pieces or different interpretations.
Yeah.
And who knows what other secrets and surprises these archives still hold. What we've explored today is just a small glimpse into a vast and complex world.
Very true.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through these fascinating MI5 files today.
It was my pleasure. I always find it rewarding to delve into these archives and uncover the stories they have to tell.
And to you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you a new perspective on the world of Cold War espionage. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop learning.
They ultimately concluded that Sanders was too unreliable to even be a German agent. They labeled him a pathological liar. He was eventually deported back to the Netherlands in 1945, but not before he consumed a considerable amount of MI5's time and resources.
So not a spy, but a master at disrupting the system and keeping the intelligence agencies busy. He sounds like a fascinating character study in his own right. What can we take away from all these cases we've looked at today, then?
Well, I think these files really highlight how intertwined personal lives could become. With matters of national security during the Cold War, they also underscore the dangers of letting societal biases and anxieties influence intelligence work.
Yeah, it's incredible how much these files reveal about the era. Beyond just the spy stories, you really get a sense of the anxieties and the prejudices that shaped people's lives and had a very real impact on the course of events.
Yeah, it's what makes these archives so valuable. They're not just about spies and secrets. They're a window into the past, offering a unique perspective on the social and political landscape of the time.
Right. It's a good reminder that history is never black and white. There are always these layers of complexity and nuance to uncover. What do you think, for our listener, is the most important thing to keep in mind when exploring these kinds of historical records?
Well, I think it's crucial to remember that these files represent just one perspective, one interpretation of events. It's important to approach them with a critical eye, to question the assumptions and biases that may have shaped the information they contain.
Right, like trying to piece together a puzzle.
Yep.
To get the bigger picture from these fragments of information, always aware that there might be missing pieces or different interpretations.
Exactly.
And who knows what other secrets and surprises these archives still hold. I mean, what we've explored today is just a small glimpse into a vast and complex world.
Very true.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through these fascinating MI5 files today.
It was my pleasure.
I always find it rewarding to delve into these archives and uncover the stories they have to tell. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you a new perspective on the world of Cold War espionage. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop learning.